want to talk to you about is doing assemblies in Onshape. So we can come into our Onshape here, and we're going to be working with this buggy file here. So I have buggy student copy, and I've actually made this public. So if you don't have access to our team account, whatever one we have, go ahead and into your search, make sure that you are in public. Just type in buggy space dash space student, and it will pop right up. You can then right click on that and you can go copy workspace. Copying the workspace will let you rename it however you see fit. You can see that since this is a copy of the student copy, it just adds that to the end of it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to open it up and work on this original and then delete my assembly afterwards. That way it doesn't affect the master. Now you'll notice that once you make this copy, you'll have a whole bunch of files and folders and tabs in here. So basically what we have is we have our part studio right here. These are the individual drawings or individual parts. We have our drawings. If you wanted to create this on your own and not use my files, you can just use these drawings, make all of your own in your own document completely separate of this, and everything is there for you. And then we have our assembly. Our assembly is going to be the roadmap, or this is going to be the model finished that you're going to basically base everything off of. So since I don't have an empty assembly right now, I'm going to go ahead and just create another one, and it's going to pop up as assembly 2. From here, you can see we just have a blank slate, and we have our navigation cube. We can look around, but there's nothing here. So the first thing that we have to do is insert some of the parts that we want. Now you can see that I have all the parts from my part studios. I even have a little button over here for assemblies. So if I wanted to, I could assemble multiple of my buggies all on top of each other. So this works really well for a sub-assembly where you can take maybe part of it and then you can just duplicate it over and over again. It's not super applicable to this demonstration though. So we can then start to place all of our parts. Now this is the beauty of an assembly, is that I only have to make one blue part and then I get to place it however many times I need to. And we can start to put all of these things in. Now I will recommend, after you're done, you can hit the checkbox here, I will recommend starting with a workable amount of parts. You don't want to keep on loading them in here because then it just gets a little hard to move around. Everything gets in your way. So as always, I start with my origin. So if I take a look at my assembly 1, that's going to be the roadmap, I'm going to go ahead, you can see there's my origin there, I have a red block on it, so I'm going to start with a red block on that origin. So we don't just simply drag and try to place these things here. Instead what we use is mates. We have all these different mates up here, and if you take a look, when you hover, you get a name. The name is pretty synonymous for what the tool or what the mate actually allows, because it always allows some sort of degree of freedom unless you use the fasten mate. And if you hover over it longer, it kind of tells you what's going on and how the mate should be applied. Now once you click on a mate, you can always change it. So if we've applied something accidentally, we can change it back to anything that we want. So it gives you a lot of freedom. Now the nice thing about having all these different types of mates is that you can pick the one that works for you. Meaning you don't need to constrain something in 3 different dimensions, X, Y, and Z. Instead, you, for the most part, can just use one of these mates and the mate connectors. Now, what is a mate connector? A mate connector is once you have your mate tool open, you hover over any face or any part of your object, and you get all these white dots. These are your mate connectors. They're going to basically be the anchor points that are going to attach 2 different mate connectors together. So let's start off. We're going to grab this corner here, and we're going to be placing this on our origin. Now it's important to note that our z-axes are in the same orientation. So I now have this being the front of my object, and we are ready to rock and roll moving forward. We can click OK, and now this is stuck there. It will not be able to move. And here's our mate over here, and we can always double click and change it however we see fit. Obviously, we're going to leave it for now. Next, we can start to build out from here. I'm going to go ahead and on the top dead center here, I'm going to place one of my other parts. As you click on the 2 points, they automatically jump, and we can hit OK. And then I'm going to work on the corner here. So essentially, I have this part in this corner. So I have one of my pieces here, and now I'm going to work on one of my pieces here. So for this one, you have to get a little bit creative. Even though we're trying to attach it to this red one, there's all these chamfers here, don't give you a lot of position to attach to. You can see the mate connectors don't go all the way out to the edge. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to attach it to this face here. So I want that face, that outside edge, and this outside edge to actually touch each other. Now, they are touching each other, but they're in the wrong orientation. Now, this is, since I know this is right, something went wrong with Onshape, and it's simply a matter of flipping or rotating. So I know that I don't want this inside of my block, so flipping is going to be the first thing I do. And you can see we're already looking a little bit better. Next, we can just rotate this, and in this case, I only needed to rotate it once, and now it's been in its proper position, and we can hit the OK. And now we can continue to go around and keep on building out on this. So if we wanted to grab the middle of this one, we could place it onto the middle of this one, and that's going to be built there. And then if we wanted to put one on the top here, we grab the top middle of that and actually put it onto the bottom middle of this one. Now you can see that I waited there for a second. This point here, look at my Z, this blue little line. If you go to the bottom, the Z is now going in a different direction. It's important to note which face you're selecting which point on because it changes the orientation. Also, if you're trying to get to something like a cylinder, you can see that the dots are actually on the inside. If you're trying to get to one and it's really hard, while you have the face selected, hold the shift button and it will lock those mate connectors so nothing else appears. Once I release, it'll then allow me to transition to a different face. I can hold shift again, and now it locks that face in. So what we're going to be doing is grabbing the bottom side here and clicking on it and taking a look at how it's positioned. That looks good to me. So now I'm going to be done with this corner, and I'm going to start to put my axle and my wheel in. Now this is where we want a different one. We're actually going to be using the revolute mate, and we want to make sure that we take, and we're going to be placing the top here with the top center here. Once we hit OK, we look good, but the problem is, how do I get my wheel on? It's not sticking out enough. So if we double click on that, we could have done this in the first place, but now that we come back to it, we actually have an offset here. The offset's going to allow us to change that offset, how far it sticks out, and now we get to adjust it for whatever we want. So I do have a set number. You can take a look at it because of how this is going to fit, but it looks like I'm probably going to be going somewhere around 0.75, and I'm going to hit OK. The very last one is I'm actually going to fasten my wheel onto that. And even though I locked my wheel onto the axle is allowed to spin. So when I click and drag this, you can see that the little hole on the outside is actually spinning, showing the degrees of freedom. But when I click and drag on this, it doesn't slide in and out. I can drag on my axle and I should get this to spin. It's a little hard since it's a smaller diameter. But that's basically how you get started using the assembly tools. Go ahead and see if you can make the entire buggy. And if you have any questions, as always, go ahead and contact me.